Hi! Today I'll be doing a critique of this illustration by Daisy Farm. The artist said they were mainly struggling with making it look finished, but didn't want to render it too much, and wanted a bit of help with the lamb and the hair. So I'll be going over the trick I use to make illustrations look more complete, as well as some perspective and construction issues.
I really like the vibe of her face, so I don't really want to change it up too much, but I want to adjust how she's holding the lamb so that it looks a little bit more natural. So if the eyes are approximately halfway down the head structure should look something like this. I know she doesn't have ears, but the ear attachment point would be around here. It might be nice for the eyes, like I'm not going to change your eyes very much, but for eyes to kind of follow perspective a little bit more. I also love the shape of her nose. I'm also not going to change that much. Just going to make very minor adjustment to the face so it follows the angle that she's looking at, yeah? So you notice that I'm kind of shifting everything to this side, which is how a face should look if it's turned. I feel like you would want to move the head a little bit here, just because right now it looks a little off-center. You see what I mean? If I draw shoulders like this, the neck kind of looks like it's a bit skewed to this side, so I'm just going to move her entire head somewhere over here instead. So I'm not really sure how lambs are really held. The issue is like she probably can hold it like that, but physically if we think about holding a lamb in this way, you're basically only supporting this animal with your biceps, which in the short term is probably fine, but you probably don't want to be holding it long term. So let's go with this pose. It's so cute. We'll use it as reference. Kind of bring the arms out over here and kind of tuck it below the lamb like that. And it's cute anyway to be kind of wrapping the arms around the lamb. The sleeping face is totally fine. We're not going to touch that. So the lamb's head, I'll just shift it over here a little bit. We don't have to change it all that much because it's very cute and I love it. But we may want to bring up one of these hoofs. Actually, I might lift it a bit. Okay, so I'll have her supporting the lamb's butt. So I'll kind of bring her arms a little further back. And have her supporting the lamb's feet like this. That's going to be my rough paint over. So now let's adjust your drawing to make the changes I suggested. So I'm just going to take her head and kind of move it just like to fit here. So after I finish this, I'll give you my secret tip to making anything looking more finished. Just hold your horses. We're going to get there. Then we gotta move our hands up here instead. I'm just gonna make this lamb's feet kind of go down a little bit because they're dangling, so they kind of have to abide by gravity. These are the changes I would suggest so far. So I'm gonna go in and clean these up just a little bit and try to make my changes match your line art. Okay, I'm also gonna get in here and change the eyes a bit, I think. I personally really like to make the upper lash line a little thicker to give it that kind of appealing look, but you don't have to do this. This part is personal preference. It's a small issue, but I feel like because we have some shapes coming out here now, it might be nice to bring out the hair this way to give it more of a sense of balance. I also think the hat could be a little bit higher. Somehow it looks like the hat is pressing down on the hair a little bit. So I'm gonna move it just a little smidgen up, just to give her hair a little bit of room. So I guess I can start with the shading right now. We don't want to go crazy with the rendering, but my first suggestion would be to simply make your shadows darker. Right now, there's almost no difference between your light and your shadow, so don't be afraid to make it a little bit darker. So here is the color of your skin. Let's drop the value and really start shading out shading some stuff. Okay, so that's tip 1, all right? And really, you don't have to do fancy rendering, just cell shading, but really think of some large, interesting shapes you can make with your shadows. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna say the light's coming from this direction, like that. So I'm gonna add some interesting cast shadows here. And there might actually be some shadow currently falling from her head onto her dress here. So I'm gonna add that as well. You can just use a multiplier for this. I'm gonna draw this on directly. Like these curls are going to cast some shadow onto the neck as well. If you change the values, if you change it all to black and white, you can see that the difference between your light and shadow is very, very, very minor. Like you can also shade in the curls as well. So we're not doing any crazy rendering right now, okay? Like I just take your existing shadow colors and just make them all a little bit darker. Like the hat is also going to leave a shadow. Just think of all the things that will leave cast shadows. And I think the most important thing you can consider doing is actually just thinking of my favorite thing, which is ambient occlusion. If you're very, very selective with where you add very, very dark shadows, you can keep the lines thin everywhere else, but let's say like, oh, it's gonna get really dark here. Just add a little bit of super dark shadow here. And like a little bit over here. Just where there are contact points, and that can really bring your drawing to life. Here as well, right underneath here. You don't have to do it everywhere, just where there are contact points. Maybe on the hair a bit here. Like, I really like this trick because it really completes the look of the drawing. If you're doing a little bit of ambient occlusion, you actually don't even need to do cell shading. Like, it's actually enough to make it look dimensional. So we can do a little bit underneath this collar as well. Let me just fix the shape of this a bit. Like, this is gonna contact the skin, right? Like, real life doesn't have lines, but it has ambient occlusion, which looks an awful lot like lines sometimes. Yeah, she has kind of ruffled sleeves, so I'll make it come out a little bit more here. If we're gonna add a little bit of occlusion here as shadows as well over here, just add it like here, right here. And just a little bit of ambient shadows here and here, where the lamb's legs are touching her arms. Yeah? Something like that. It's very simple, but it already looks like it's resting on her now. I don't actually feel like drawing hands, unfortunately, so what if I just don't? Alright, I'll try my best to draw some hands. Just very loosely, okay? There you go. Hopefully you kind of got an idea of what I was trying to do, right? So here's the before. Okay, let me just move this to the center so you guys can see. And here is the after. So just to sum up my critiques, first one is don't be afraid to use reference because I have no idea how a person would hold a lamb, so I got a reference for that. References are great. Second is that even though you're doing a soft painting, don't be afraid to make the difference between light and shadow dark enough so that it's actually visible. So that will make it look a lot more dimensional. And the third thing is that with judicious use of ambient occlusion, you can really make it, even if you choose to have no shading whatsoever, just having some thicker lines where things contact will make your drawing look a lot more lively and dimensional. There you go. I can also flip the canvas. So I hope that was helpful.